Hi, everybody. My name is Jared Milrad. I'm the founder of Movie Karma. We are the nonprofit organization based here in Los Angeles that created our podcast here called Rewriting Hollywood, which I'm sure, as many of you know, focuses on diversity, equity, inclusion, and social impact in Hollywood, as well as the storytellers around the world who are having a social impact through their stories. And today, we're really lucky to have two special guests who we met through a Show for Change film festival. They've made a really impactful project that touches on criminal justice issues, as well as many other issues that I think will be insightful and enlightening for all of you. Our guests today are Karin Shiel and Sean Dino Johnson. They are the folks behind a short film, award-winning short film, Behind These Walls, which we recognize as part of our Show for Change film festival. And I'm excited to have Dino and Karin joining us today. Karin, Dino, great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for recognizing our film and for having us.
Absolutely, we're proud to. So let's start with you, Karin. We saw that you had experience as a video producer, and Dino, we saw that you've been part of a terrific nonprofit called the Council for Unity. Karin, maybe we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit, if you would, about your journey to producing and sort of, what do those earlier days look like? What sort of set you on this current path?
Yeah. So I started out in public television at the local station in New York, doing a variety of different shows, and landed at Sesame Street, where I produced for many years. And until I was about 5 years into my third child, and we moved from a really magical stage on 9th Avenue in Hell's Kitchen to Astoria, Queens, which for me, based on where I was living, was really hard with 3 kids. And so eventually I made the really tough decision to step away from that, as much as it was just an absolutely fabulous group of people and a great project. And so I was in Northern Westchester and with my kids, and knew that I wanted to still be doing something that was closer to home. And I had known Catherine Vokins, who is the founder of RTA, through some other avenues. And I just met with her and said, because I was really drawn to the combination of social justice and arts, and nobody does that better than RTA. And so I was just not sure what that would mean, but I started talking with her, and eventually I pretty quickly joined the board, and then began leading the board along with one of my good friends who became my co-chair, Allison Chernow, who I co-produced this video with. So that's sort of how I got into RTA, and have been working with RTA for probably 7 years, and I'm just super grateful to be a part of this really amazing group. Yeah.
It is a really amazing group. And for those who don't know, so RTA is Rehabilitation Through the Arts. And Dino, I want to ask you on that point. I know you've been working together on RTA, Rehabilitation Through the Arts. And you have now, a nonprofit you're part of. Tell us a little bit about, Dino, your journey, which I know we see in the film, but for those who don't know, how did you kind of find your way to where you are? Give us a little bit of that.
Well, while incarcerated, I was inducted into an organization called the Council for Unity, and that's also a non-for-profit. And the Council for Unity was a very powerful vehicle for me, but RTA was as well. So I was part of 2 organizations. I'm actually one of the founding members within RTA, one of the first guys in the first group that got together. And to give you an understanding of what Council for Unity is about, Council for Unity is an organization that's very heavy on building social skills, helping you become a better you. RTA allowed me to find who I was in my journey. RTA helped me to develop tools to be a better me. For example, I was an angry person. I was very angry. stayed key blocked, frustrated all the time, got into a lot of arguments. And once I got involved with RTA, I started finding myself and finding out who I was. You know, when you start getting into character development and developing characters and scenes and stuff like that, you start taking the characters apart. I started doing that with myself. I started assessing, analyzing how I treated people, how people treat me, the response to that. And I started developing a new character as who I am, who I can be. So I was empowered to do that through RTA.
Such a lovely story, and I want to get into that more. Dino, for those who haven't seen the film, you talk about in the film as well, which you alluded to a minute ago, the time when you're incarcerated, which I think was about 15 years, if I'm not mistaken. And then
yes.
Prior to that, you were right. And then prior to that, you talk about growing up where you felt like you only saw kind of one path for yourself, and it was essentially
right.
drug-related path for yourself.
Right.
Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think that in terms of your childhood, and had you had maybe some different opportunities like arts education or RTA when you were that age, like how would that have shifted your path, do you think?
Well, at a young age, I'm from South Jamaica, Queens. From a young age, I became a drug trafficker. And I became a very large drug trafficker, making more money than you can imagine as a little kid. And that was the only thing I saw that I was capable of doing. I was only exposed to the hood, to the street, the culture in which I grew up to, and looking at television and watching, TV and movies and seeing plays. That was something that I couldn't really relate to because I've never been afforded an opportunity to get connected with something like that. So here I am in prison working out, and the guy come over to me and talk about theater, and I'm literally laughing. I'm saying to myself, "Come on, what are you talking about theater?" And to show you how naive I was, theater to me was just walking around in tights, and to be, not to be, and the stereotypical, well, that's theater. And what drew me, at first I'm saying to myself, you know what? If you want a different result, you got to try something new. So I said, you know what? In that point in my life, I was open to new things, trying new things. And I came down to the school building and I looked into the room and I saw guys that were just like me. Guys who spent most of their life in certain communities and lived the same life that I lived, And I noticed in one corner, you had the thugs. In another corner, you had the musicians. Other corner, you had the writers. And other corner, you just had guys who these are guys, certain groups I wouldn't even associate myself with while in prison. You know what I mean? I was just more or less in the hardcore group. And it was like, when I saw these different cliques in the room, and then we started talking about it and reading scripts, and guys started working together, it was just a different experience for me. And I realized the fact that we was a diverse group of men, that made it our strength, because we had every experience, a well-rounded experience in that room with us all in there. And working together, we built bridges, and it pretty much built a community. And my experience of community was nothing like that. It was, I'm over here, you stay over there, and that. But this was a community that shared, worked together, worked on a project, and it gave me a great feeling inside. It made me feel like I was working towards something, and I feel myself changing in the process. So I say to the arts, wow, I wish I was exposed to something like that at a younger age, where I get to find out what I'm capable of, what type of skills I can develop. The arts is a powerful vehicle.
It really is, and it's usually, I feel like, on the chopping block first, in public, especially public education, which I'm a product of as well. Karin, I wanted to ask you, you produced this film. I imagine there are some challenges making it, and connecting with Dino, I imagine, was a process. So I just want to hear about that. What were those earlier stages like of making this into a film, and what were some of the challenges you faced?
Yeah, so really the biggest challenge was narrowing it down. We knew for sure that we wanted to interview Dino, but even that, like, we interviewed him for well over an hour and had to boil it down to 5 minutes. And there were so many different things that we wanted to share. So, and we had an absolutely amazing editor named Amy Foote, who really was instrumental in helping us to do that. But at the same time that we made this film, we made one other short plus some shorter shorts, all out of the same one-day shoot, which was, we went into a studio in Brooklyn and interviewed 13, really trying to even decide which 13 alumni from our program to interview was really hard. And then narrowing down the 13 that we interviewed to 5 or 6 that we ended up putting in this other video that we did, which is called Unlocked. That video is also available. It's at unlockedvoices.org. And that really shows more of the stories that we want to tell. But this was, so that was really the hardest thing, was just deciding, because there are so many amazing stories that we want to share from the people that we work with.
Yeah, I imagine that was not easy narrowing it down. And you said taking so much footage and getting down to 5 minutes, that's a tough feat. You mentioned Dino in the film, as you alluded to a minute ago, to that moment when you found out about RTA, about this program, and you said, we're in a maximum security facility, and you want me to run around in tights talking about to be or not to be, which I think is such, not only is that hilarious, but also like it's a common thought, I'm sure, that a lot of people have, about the theater and the arts. It's only for certain people. It looks a certain way. It's very maybe highfalutin. It's not attainable for folks, or accessible for folks. Like, what do you think shifted for you when you were starting to get involved in the program that maybe you could pass on to other people who might be listening to this and thinking, like, I don't know, I've never done theater. I don't know if it's for me.
I didn't realize how powerful theater was. I tell you, because when you think of prison, you think of the most rawest audience you could come in contact with. And it's worse than the Apollo. Because if you're not true to whatever you're doing, they're going to expose you in there. That they have nothing else to do. You know what I'm saying? It's a very hard audience to please. And the more we started doing performances for them, we noticed silence in the audience, and people doing this and listening. And you don't hear that type of quiet in prison, where guys were really listening and they were impressed. And then after we would do a show, I'd go to the yard, and a guy look at me. And at the time I had dreadlocks. I had long dreadlocks going down my back. And he said, yo, Dread, I dig what you did, man. Yo, that was cool. I like that, man. I really like that, man. Someday I want to do something like that. And I looked at him like, really? These were guys that did nothing all day but just hung around the yard.
Tough guys. Yeah.
And they're expressing interest in actually performing, and they found themselves enjoying themselves watching the show, but also learning. And we started realizing that we had a powerful voice. We had a voice that can help our audience deal with issues, everyday issues that we deal with in there, that doesn't get addressed when we watch television, doesn't get addressed when we, when media or whatever the case may be. So we became a voice for those men. And that was a powerful feeling. And it felt good because you were helping people. You made people deal with the reality of their life. We brought humor to the stage, which made them forget that they was even in prison for 45 minutes or an hour. And it was like everybody started traveling with this journey. And that blew my mind. I had no idea it was going to have that kind of effect.
Go ahead,
Can I share a little additional thing to that? Because yes, it's just so true, and it happens over and over again. So in RTA, we started out just doing theater and still do a lot of theater, but we also do visual arts, poetry, writing, dance. And I had an experience going into, we work in 6 maximum and medium security prisons in New York. And at one of the facilities, we have performances now and then, and it's really an amazing experience for me to go in and to be watching these and also to be in with the population, also watching and looking at their reactions. So a few years ago, there was a dance performance at one of the facilities, and there was a combination of people from the outside and inside in the theater. And at the end of it, there was a little Q&A, and the men who were on the inside, this was in Woodburn, I think, were talking about how they had been peeking into the gym and watching the rehearsals of the modern dance and making all kinds of fun of the people that were doing that and not getting it at all. But then they went to the performance and they were absolutely reverent and also wanted to know how they could get into the program. And it was just amazing to listen to these men talk about what they had seen and how moving it was and how they really saw things in a whole different way. It was very, very cool.
That's incredible. I mean, the impact of that. There's also, Dino, I mean, isn't there such an irony in this, right? In so many ways that, as you said, as a young person, you didn't have access to these programs. And then you're incarcerated, which we know is, still today, unfortunately, there's systemic racism at play, there's systemic inequities, it's mostly Black and brown men. And that's the first time it sounds like you really had access to something.
First time. Before I was exposed to RTA, I was an introvert. I didn't communicate with too many people. I stayed to myself. I didn't have confidence. I wasn't an effective communicator whatsoever. And when it brought me those tools to be able to function and be able to communicate effectively with people and use my body, use body language to either make people feel happy, sad, joyful, remorseful, that's power. And it was like, wow, and then I realized, wow, I was misunderstood for so many years. And then I started understanding why so many other people are misunderstood. Sometimes they don't have the platform or the vehicle to develop certain abilities that makes a lot of people successful today.
Right. They don't have that opportunity. And you said that platform, such a good point. Karin, I wanted to ask what the impact of this program has been on you. And I wonder what kind of feedback you've been getting as you've seen people react to this who didn't have this platform. What has that been like for you as well?
Yeah. So not almost no one has seen this one yet. So we haven't gotten a lot of feedback on it yet, but we have for Unlocked, the other one that also has footage of Dino in it. So we have gotten a lot of feedback on that, and it's been very, very powerful. People, the reason that we did this in the first place is that, we've been, RTA has been working inside prisons for 25 years and maximum security prisons. So it takes a long time to get home. But now, because we've been doing this for so long, there are a lot of our members who are now home. And so we have been able to have events where our alumni are able to speak to the public. And every single time that happens, it blows everyone's mind to really hear what they have to say. But it's a very limited audience, to just one sort of theater or, small group at a time. And so we really wanted to be able to share these voices in a much broader way. And that has been the goal, and to really show that there is a very different way to approach criminal justice. And I use the word justice really loosely, but it isn't working the way it is. This kind of approach is not only really, it recognizes people's humanity, but it also just gives people the tools that they need, and creates, just a much more positive environment for a really low cost relative to all the other costs involved in incarceration. So I really see this program as such a model for a different way, and for people to start, talking about that and imagining how else it could be, because it isn't working.
It's not. I mean, it's so not. Obviously, we see the impacts in communities and families, and the numbers of folks who are suffering in these places. Have you been able? Because obviously, policymakers, Karin, obviously talk a lot about recidivism. Is this, what is your, the arts is just, feel good stuff. Is this actually impacting on the ground? Have you been able to track sort of and present to even policy folks, hey, yeah, this is actually changing lives and communities?
Yes, we have been making inroads in that way. And, just as you mentioned, the recidivism rate, the national recidivism rate, meaning who goes back into, first of all, 96% of people come home, right? And the national recidivism rate is currently 60%. People who have gone through this program, the recidivism rate is under 7%.
Wow.
And so politicians, policymakers are recognizing that. New York State is who we mostly work with. California also has some more progressive plans, and puts more emphasis on that. But New York has been stepping up more lately. There's a huge long way to go, but we have been working with Albany to try to recognize that and to get more funding and more recognition for this, because we're, like I said, we're right now we're in 6 facilities. We want to be, we were supposed to have opened in 2 more. That's been delayed because of COVID, but there's, the kinds of opportunities that Dino's talking about are available to these ones that are sort of closer to New York. The further you get away from the metropolitan area, the harder and harder it is to find any programs. And
less resources.
Yeah, many fewer resources, which is hard. And even at Sing Sing, right, there's a long waiting list to even be able to get into our program, because we have a limited amount of space for classrooms.
Right. I was going to ask that, Dino, also throw that to you. Like, what is your vision for the growth of the program? I mean, do you feel that this should be everywhere? And are there, typically not resources as far as, like in other states or in more rural parts of different states?
Absolutely. This program should be everywhere. But it's not, it's just, well, when I think about how RTA came together, having the right people that's willing to give their time and come in and sacrifice their time. Where a lot of prisons are located, there's no people with that interest of giving with their time. That's what I meant when I said resources. It's not people that's probably in the industry that's interested in donating their time, which is 9 hours up north, and you know what I mean? So it's difficult to get the resources there to some facilities to really expose them in the way that RTA was started in Sing Sing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I'd love to see if we can all push to make that change, because I do think there's a lot of people listening to this, I'm sure, in the industry or who are creative, who are saying, how do I help? So Karin, what do you think on that point? How can folks get involved? Are there things that we can push for in different states or communities to get these types of programs or get your program there?
Yeah, Yeah, so this website that I mentioned, unlockedvoices.org, has a lot of resources for what people can do, and to be able to to change policy, to actually donate to different organizations that are doing this work. Yeah. So I would really encourage people to go on to unlockedvoices.org, and you can see, and also our website, which I think is linked to that one, but our website is rta/arts.org.
Great, and we'll try to circulate that too. Dino, go ahead. Did you want to add to that?
No. Karin did so fine.
Okay, Karin got it to that. Great. Well, let's on that point, we have a couple last one called rapid fire questions to ask you. These are kind of quicker, lighter things to get to know each of you a little bit better. The first one we had for you both is, if you have, Dino, I'll start with you. If you have a favorite play or something you performed as part of RTA that you would share with us.
So many. The one that comes to my mind was a performance that we did with poetry and rap. And I was into poetry. I'm a poet, but rap was something new to me. And I literally had to go in the yards of the prison and sit with some of the young guys and learn how to rap.
Wow.
And it was interesting. It was interesting. I learned so much. I learned so much. Every performance we did, I learned from, because it was something new. Even when we took it from urban to Elizabethan, it was a journey. So I can't say, no, I can't just name one. I would have to say all of them. And I was there from the beginning. When we started putting together sheets and cutting off arm sleeves, and we didn't have backdrops, any of that stuff. It was all just raw talent, raw learning, arts, creativity, and it's evolved so much today to a point where now we got professional sets being built by the actual vocational trade center in the prison and stuff. So it's just come so far. It's unbelievable what's possible when the right people push forward.
It is incredible, and your story is incredible as part of it. Karin, I was going to ask you that. Is there a performance that stands out to you, or something you've seen as part of the program that stands out to you?
Oh man, yeah. I'm just trying to think of the different performances that we've seen, and they're so different, and they're all so wonderful. Watching the RTA members doing Shakespeare, it was pretty amazing. When Father Comes Home from War was really, really powerful. That was about slavery. The one that surprised me the most and was just so full of joy was, believe it or not, Wizard of Oz, which we did at Sing Sing a couple of years ago. And when I heard that was the choice, I thought that was a really strange choice. Like, why would that's like so sort of boring, and everyone knows it, and it's like, why would you want to do that? That sounds. But it was really, really magical, and some of the highlights were watching the guys be munchkins. So they had taken drums, and like drums that you would have, like, I guess, food in, that are like big, multi-gallon drums, painted them and sitting on them, and then with these colorful hats and colorful socks, and squished down on the drum so they look like really small people, and then spinning around and singing was hysterically funny and just so different than what you would expect to see.
Right.
And seeing the people that were the Scarecrow, the Cowardly Lion, and whatever the other one was, the Tin Man, were all just super gifted actors. And then the singing of the final song, There's No Place Like Home, had the entire place in tears, because the messages there are just so profound for everybody. Because the other thing that has been really, really wonderful in the last maybe 5 years or so or less is that we finally, after years and years of our founder trying to get seats for the families of the actors to be able to come into the visiting room or into the theater, they finally allowed that. So this audience was a lot of family members who, some of them are seeing their loved one for the first time doing anything like this. And so that song, in combination with everything that had preceded it, was really, really powerful.
Wow, that's incredible and special. Thank you for sharing that. I was going to ask 2 last questions. Dino, I'll go throw some to you. You know, you've had an incredible journey, obviously, thus far, and still writing the next chapter, I'm sure. So I was curious, like, what do you see, or what is your hope for yourself, and or maybe the program in the next 5 years or so? Where do you want that to head?
I hope RTA continues to break barriers and continue to go places where it's considered impossible. And it's so needed. It's so needed. And I think RTA has begun to do this, but it could be much more. It can do much, much more. I just hope it just continues to flourish, you know?
Mm. Karin, I wonder what thoughts on that. What is your hope, either for yourself or for the program in the next 5 years or so?
Yeah. So for the program, we really want to expand to more facilities, and we do have a plan to do that. And then there's also a really exciting program that is about helping in a different way, helping men and women prepare to go home and to be successful at home. And that is something that we're launching in the fall, and we can talk more about in the future, because it's exciting, and it's an additional way that we're going to do that. So there's that. And then personally, I do really feel committed to trying to share voices that might not already be heard. I think your podcast is really fantastic, and there's such a need for more diverse storytellers, because if we don't have diverse storytellers, we won't have diverse stories, and that is a huge loss for all of us. In addition to all of the other equity issues around that, it's a tragedy for everybody that we don't get to hear. Just looking at the kinds of stories that are told about what's going on in prison, who's in prison, what's going on there. It's just they're so skewed and so sensationalized and not human and very othered. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, it doesn't. And through your program and others, we can finally give folks the agency to tell their own stories, which is right. Which is so beautiful. Last question I'll throw to you, Dino. We asked this of every guest, but I thought it'd be particularly powerful to hear from you. If you could go back in time and tell yourself one thing when you were growing up, one word of wisdom, one thing you've learned, what would you tell yourself, and why would you tell yourself that thing?
I would tell myself, you have the ability to be your best, and you have the ability to be your worst. I didn't realize that when I was younger, that you had a choice. That would be the most profound thing I would tell myself.
Incredibly profound. Thank you, Dino. Thank you, Karin. It was just such an honor having you both. I'm just so glad we came across your project, and I hope more folks will see it and learn about it. Again, it's called Behind These Walls. Our guests today, Karin Shiel and Sean Dino Johnson. Check out Rehabilitation Through the Arts if you haven't already. We'll try to hyperlink that. And thanks to you both for being here. It's really a pleasure having you on.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you, Jared. It's a pleasure.
Yeah.